Okay, we call it as brain dead or brain death, due to which they are not able to respond externally, but they are responding internally to the drugs or to the medicines that are being provided to the body. Internally they are responding, internally they are reacting. Okay, so because of that response that is taking place inside the body, I will call coma patient, or I'll consider a coma patient as living. Okay, I cannot call such patients as non-living, because other internal mechanisms are working, they are responding to various medications they are undergoing. Okay, so this is the answer which I've given to this question that is always asked when this characteristic is decided, and this is the justification I'm giving, that why I consider coma patient as living. Okay, so except this example, otherwise this is considered as the defining property of living thing. So those were the characteristics of a living matters, and we decided which one is the defining property. Okay. Growth, reproduction, metabolism. Metabolism is also somewhere related to cellular organization, that even cellular organizations, various type of cellular organization has an effect on metabolism. So this is also somewhere considered as the defining property, and response to stimuli. So this and this was considered as the defining property of living thing. Yeah, I hope the concepts are clear.
So far, we have discussed what do you mean by living. We discussed various characteristics of living matter. One, the first being growth. We discussed the exceptions and why it cannot be used as the defining property. Then we discussed about reproduction, then exceptions in that, the organisms which cannot reproduce, and why it cannot be considered as the defining property of a living thing. Then metabolism, we discussed the total reaction that takes place inside the body and how it is considered as the defining property. Then response to stimuli was also considered one of the defining properties. As you all can see in the slide, where it is basically responding to the inner environmental changes, where the plants are actually growing in the direction of light. They are basically responding to the light, phototropic movement, which is known as phototropic movement. And the image on the left is actually representing self-consciousness. So this is a consciousness that human beings possess, which where human beings are aware of themselves. Under response to stimuli, we discussed about consciousness, where human beings are one of them. Human beings are the organisms who have self-consciousness. Okay. So we answered this question, and we also give justification where coma patients can be considered living or non-living. So we get into the next topic, that is nomenclature. So nomenclature is basically the process of giving scientific name or a standardized name to an organism that is universally accepted. Okay. So that instead of giving many local names to the same organism and creating confusion, we have to have a standardized name that is known by everyone. So there are two codes, like there are rules or codes that has to be followed while naming, while giving scientific names to the organism. One of them is ICBN, that is International Code of Botanical Nomenclature, which actually looks after the naming of plants. And ICZN, that is International Code of Zoological Nomenclature, that actually looks after the naming of the animals. So we'll just have a look on the rules and code which has to be followed while giving a scientific name to the organism. So we will discuss in detail by using an example. We'll just read it out from here and we can do it in the whiteboard. So biological names are generally in Latin and it has to be written in italics. So irrespective of their origin, whether it is Indian origin or any place, the word or the name will be Latinized. Okay, I'll discuss that why Latin language has been chosen. And the first word in the biological name represent the genus to which the organism belong, and the second component denotes its specific epithet or the species. And both the words, if it is handwritten, you have to separately underline it. If it is in printed, it has to be in italics, as you can see here. As an example, Mangifera indica, the biological name for mango, you can see it is being printed in italics to show that it is the scientific name or to indicate their Latin origin. And another rule is the first letter of the genus should always start with a capital letter, while the second component, that is specific epithet, should start with a small letter. Okay, so we will we will follow again these codes and try to solve or see an example of Mangifera indica.
Okay, so as we saw in the presentation, we discussed about what do you mean by nomenclature and what is the code who separately, there are separate codes which is there for naming plants, for naming animals, because the biodiversity is huge. Okay, the number of species present in this biodiversity is big. Okay, so we cannot afford to have multiple names for the same organism and study about it, because there will be many people who will be studying about our biodiversity, so it will create confusion if we have different names for the same organism. Okay, so we need to have a standardized way or a standardized name that is universally accepted, and that process of naming the organism is known as nomenclature. Okay, so we did read, we did discuss about the various rules which was jotted down in the slide, which has to be checked while naming an organism. Okay, so let's take an example and we will discuss that. So as said, Carolus Linnaeus was the person who introduced nomenclature, who came up with a type of nomenclature called as binomial nomenclature. Okay, there is one more type of nomenclature, that is trinomial nomenclature. We'll get into that later. Okay, so there is one more type of nomenclature, that is trinomial nomenclature. We'll get into that in the later part. Okay, so I have taken the example of mango, the scientific name of mango, that is Mangifera indica. Okay, so this language that is being chosen is Latin. This is the first rule which we discussed, that the names selected are in Latin. Now why is it so? Why Latin? Because Latin is considered as a dead language. Basically, the language that won't be further modified or changed, which will make our work easier. Because just imagine, I named this mango today this name, and suddenly some modification or changes happen in the language, I'll again have to change the name of this mango. So it will be a tedious process for the people who actually does this work. Okay, so we have chosen a language that won't be further modified. Okay, so that is why we have chosen Latin as the Language for giving scientific name to the organism or any flora or fauna. Then what are the two things that are considered naming an organism is which genus it belongs and what is its specific epithet. So the specific epithet or genus, these are the two things that are considered while naming an organism. Now what is genus? That's which genera it belongs to. The hierarchy level which we have learnt in our lower classes, the diversity in living organism, kingdom, phylum, division, class, order, family, genus and species, which we will be discussing in this chapter as well. But this we are seeing which genus it belongs to, what is its species, specific epithet. Epithet is basically a characterizing word, basically which species it belongs to. This tells you the genus, this tells you its species. Okay, so that's another rule. The other rule is when you are writing the genus name, the first letter has to be capital always. It has to be capital, and the other which you are indicating, that is specific epithet, that has to start with small letter. This is the one of the important rules while naming or while writing the name of the scientific name of the organism. Now what you have to do is you have to tell that this is the scientific name, or you have to point out the name which I have written here in the answer, in the notes or wherever. This is the scientific name. It's a Latin name. How will I show the difference? When I am writing it, it has to be separately underlined. That this is a scientific name, this has to be separately underlined. If I am printing it, it has to be printed in italics. It has to be printed in italic to show the difference. And this is a common name. This is not a general word I have included. It is a scientific name. Okay. So these are the rules: italics, specific epithet, Latin. Then another rule which is there, the abbreviated form of the author's name is put after the scientific or the biological name. It shows that this name was described by this person, that is Carolus Linnaeus. Okay. Usually it has to be separately underlined. This is the genus and the specific epithet is shown, because sometimes what happens, there would be scientists having somewhere same surname or same second name, which would again lead to confusion. But yes, it depends on the person whether he wants that abbreviated form after the name or not. But this is how it is done, and this is how it is done in case of binomial nomenclature. Bi, that is two, which only includes genus and specific epithet. Okay. You can also take various other examples as Panthera tigris, that's scientific name for tiger. Okay, so you have to separately underline. This is the capital, this is small letter. Okay, so what happens in trinomial nomenclature is this, that there is addition of subspecies as well. Yeah. In case of human beings, it is Homo sapiens sapiens. Sometimes the species and the subspecies name are same. Okay, but what I am trying to show here is when subspecies is also included while giving scientific name or biological name, It is known as trinomial nomenclature.